fundamentally, edutainment is the secret weapon for growing a B2B company. There's no doubt. Every overnight success is 10 years in the making. He was like the sole founder and he was banking $20 million every year. And I just had never heard that, But to me, that actually seemed easier to do than create something that's just growing indefinitely and you IPO it. It seemed much more achievable. Whenever somebody gives me shit because I'm not a zero revenue bootstrapper, I will respond to them and say, I have 30 million ARR company that has 40 people. I'm a bootstrapper.
You clearly get the idea that Outbound can never be this powerful because you're just still thrusting your content to someone who possibly more than 70-80% is not even interested in it.
These guys are creating these sexy looking companies like 11x AI and Artisan. Those are just spam cannons. The world doesn't want a robot to spam, right? Let me tell you what Gmail doesn't want. They don't want a robot spamming them. If I made a 6-second Facebook ad, right? It was me and my wife. And it was funny. And we kind of answered the sales objection. Then people would look forward to the ad the next week. They'd get used to seeing that. And then if they were looking forward to your ads, you won the game, right? And these ads were outrageous. The thing that's the easiest to be that just doesn't work anymore is the whole, I call it the predictable revenue model, where you get kids out of university, you put them in a seat, you have them type keys and click their mouse, and that magically creates demos for you. When there were 10 and 100 companies doing that, it worked beautifully. When there was 100,000 companies doing that same thing, that's just not the arbitrage anymore.
If marketing was an Olympic sport, you'll possibly be the world champion. Hi, Adam. How are you? We can see you.
How are you?
I'm good. Thanks. Good to see you in person. It feels like I've known you for a long while now.
Well, that means it's working.
It's working. It definitely is. So good to have you with us, Adam. Really a pleasure. I have read your content for almost over 2 years now. I think I've followed you everywhere, and it feels like we are pals, and I kind of try and implement a lot of what you talk about. So such a pleasure and honor, and welcome. We at Edbound, that's the name of this podcast that we are starting. Edbound stands for a new kind of emotion backed up with educational content, right? Whatever you do inbound or outbound, you layer it with educational content, and I call it Edbound. That's kind of the spinal cord of everything we talk about is growth and marketing, right? So welcome, and I don't think there could have been a better guest than you to talk about, playbooks that you've kind of invented, mastered, and you're inspiring literally millions. I mean, $1 million in ARR in about 16 weeks. Am I right with your current startup?
Yeah, something like that. Every overnight success is 10 years in the making.
I know.
It was a lot of things coming together to make that happen. But yeah, the short story is that's what happened.
Wonderful. And retention.com is an iconic brand. We all know about it. And I think you kind of touched about $30 million in there, and you've kind of put it on autopilot. And it's inspiring to all of us for two reasons. One, obviously it's bootstrapped. It's a dream. When someone pointed me towards your content for the first time, this friend of mine was funded by Sequoia. And, the way she said it, obviously I can't take her name. The way she said it is, we keep doing this shit with raising all this money, but what Adam's talking about, we wish we'd met that content earlier. And, retention, RB2B, what you're talking about is just so inspiring. So I would love to hear the crux of your message. What is it that you're showing the world that they're becoming your fans? And, why did she refer me to your content? I know it, but I would like to hear from you.
Great. Okay, so one of my content pillars is talking about this bootstrap versus VC topic. And I think it's interesting for a lot of reasons. Probably the biggest reason is I know a lot of people who have raised VC. I don't know a lot of people who have exited companies. I know a few. I know even fewer people who have taken large secondary rounds. And I know a handful of people who have taken small secondary rounds. Those people who've taken small secondary rounds have great businesses, but they've only taken a few $1 million out of them. I think if you have a great business, you should make millions of dollars every year. In every other market in the world you do, but you get on this VC treadmill, and there are businesses that, if they were run a certain way, would be fantastic businesses that in most cases don't actually make it to this promised land that everyone agreed was the way that we were going when like we signed this first piece of paper. Right. So the first example, so there was another gentleman, I forget his name. He had me on his podcast last week, but he wrote this blog post on like the middle, right? So like there's the tiny lifestyle business, which isn't that exciting for most people. You know, I had one at one point. If it's just tiny and not growing, it's like uninspiring. And then there's sort of like, I'm going to create, I'm going to IPO this, and, statistically, it's just really hard to do that unless, you have this like killer enterprise SaaS and you're, really going for it. But like I had heard about a guy in, I think it was 2017 when my company was stuck at 3 million, and I was in the email newsletter space, and he was also in the email newsletter space. And he had like within a few years grown his company to 30 million ARR and gotten stuck. But super lean. And he was like, the sole founder, and he was banking $20 million every year. And I just like had never heard that, but to me, that actually seemed easier to do than create something that's just growing indefinitely and you IPO it. It seemed much more achievable, at least in the world I operated in, SMB. It seemed like you could get a company, my experience with these things is like, there's this natural churn rate because nothing that I've ever built has had net revenue expansion, but there's this natural churn rate that just stalls you out at a certain point. That planted the seed. And then when I started Get Emails, which is now retention.com, it was like, there's, the churn is bad, but like there's enough demand for this to where I'm very confident I could get it to that size and run in that way. It's this amazing machine, it's just the best business in the world, right? Like, and you're not like that, those things that I started talking about in the beginning is like, you're not dependent on a transaction to realize the fruits of your labor, right? Like it's happening every quarter for me, and like, yeah, maybe I'll sell someday, maybe I won't, but like, there's no pressure to. It's better if I don't in many ways, right? Because the thing just keeps growing and getting more valuable. And in the meantime, I'm sort of like, paying off my mortgage and like doing stuff, to get my family in like a great financial situation without selling anything, which is fantastic. So, I sort of fell into having this large audience. It wasn't really by design, but all of a sudden I have it. And one of the stories that I want to tell are stories like this guy, Ross from Maripost, who I talked about. I want to tell my story because it's just another example of it, right? Like there is this possibility. And, yes, it may take you a little bit longer or whatever, but like starting small and then just using cash flow from something small to stack bigger and bigger things on top of it over the course of a decade amounts to something spectacular. And by the way, even if you're on the venture track, it's probably taking you a decade anyway, and it's probably not going to work out for you. Literally, that is not an exaggeration. That's like the math of it.
I'm feeling it. I'm not just listening to it, I'm feeling it. Because let me tell you, we've raised about $2.7 million in the venture, that the stack that we use now. And I mean, an interesting fact, I have 170 investors on my cap table, and it's a long story, but I mean,
that's a lot. That's a lot of people to talk to.
Absolutely. I mean, some of them are rolled into a singular angel fund, so they have the power of attorney. I only speak to them, but I completely get what you're saying. There was a winter. We almost died, near-death experiences, all of that. And I get it. Now, even with this venture, even when we raise, and I think you posted something around this, that when you're raising, you quoted Y Combinator founders and some of the directors, that even they say that if they're going to raise maybe $500,000 and then use that cash to build something larger, right? So, I mean, I love the way you approach this, but it's not just your thoughts about how you run a company, build it. And I know you come from a financial background, and that's another question that I'm going to ask you. You were in finance and moved to entrepreneurship. But here, I think the way you are growing these companies, the playbooks, that you built. I mean, I want to, for this side of the world, for the audience that's listening to you for the first time, and a lot of my, network community is going to listen to you for the first time because they come from a different world. But I think I really want to go deeper into it and understand your thought behind how did you come across that, or the idea that this is the way you're going to grow your business. And
so, man, I try a lot of stuff. I will just try anything. And it's like the crazier it is, the better. My view of, I think that in order to get explosive growth from zero, it's incredibly difficult, but like you need a product that is good enough to have word of mouth. It's essential that you do, because if you do not, the best marketing in the world is not going to help. I have this core fundamental belief. It's like without word of mouth, nothing else that you do will work. With word of mouth, there's a million things you can do to speed it up, right? So the two sort of like successes that I had, I got Get Emails off which is now retention.com. I got that company off the ground pretty quickly with hardly any resources. And then this one, RB2B. Similar in many ways, different in a couple. So what was similar is the product was very novel when I launched it, right? So retention.com, when I launched it, no one in this market that we were selling into had ever heard that you could get an email from a website visitor who didn't fill out a form. So it was just like, stop them in their tracks. And it worked. It really did that, And then just dumb luck, I was able to run this. I just had this idea that if I made a 60-second Facebook ad, right? Like it was me and my wife, and it was funny, and we kind of answered the sales objection. Then like people would look forward to the ad the next week. They'd get used to seeing that. And then if they were looking forward to your ads, you won the game, right? Like it's kind of like, and these ads were outrageous. And it really worked for 6 months. And how the math on it was like, generally Facebook for B2B will give you these people who are bad customers, right? They're wannabe entrepreneurs. They sign up for your thing and it's like 20% churn per month. That was happening. But we had this PLG where you could click your way to $5,000 a month. And once every week or two, we were getting a whale that would just come in and buy a $5,000 plan without even talking to us. And it would pay for the prior ads over a certain period. So as with my experience with ads, as I scaled the spend, it got less and less effective. And then at one point, 8 weeks went by and I'd spent like 40 grand on ads and I hadn't gotten a single big customer. And like all we were bringing on were these like 20% per month churning customers. So it's like, we got to stop this and do something else. But the point is, it gave an unbelievable amount of air cover, like it was an incredible top of funnel awareness mechanism to accelerate this word of mouth that we were getting. Like people would sign up and be like, oh, I saw the ads. Like whether they clicked through to an ad or not, it was like making our cold email work better. That's just like, it was incredible. It was amazing. Without those ads, like it would have been much, much slower. But it only worked for a finite amount of time. And like, I don't know if I could do it again today. It was just a thing that I tried that worked. And when it stopped working, I stopped doing it. So what is different about our B2B in that? What is the same actually is, I'm getting this incredible air cover, very top of funnel from this LinkedIn founder brand. And I think, is it's a brand marketing effort. It's like I just don't think there's any other type of brand marketing that would work for a startup with zero revenue other than the type that I'm doing on LinkedIn for this audience. Like, I just don't think you could like go to a trade show and do brand, you know what I mean? Cause like when I think of brand marketing, I think of things that are very expensive that like reinforce a brand that is already in the minds of the market. And that kind of works at that scale. Like HubSpot can go, spend $1 million at some trade show or something like that. And they're big enough that it works for them. But like, if I spent $1 million at a trade show a year ago for RB2B, like no one would have remembered RB2B walking out, right? So just this And by the way, our other company, retention.com, we sell to e-commerce, and there's just so many examples of this influencer thing, king. And like why? It's because if you have the ability to create this organic content, and for B2B, it's thought leadership. I would say it's probably thought leadership on the D2C side also. It's just, category thought leadership. It's like, oh, I'm talking about health and wellness, or like I'm talking about like, hunting or like meats or whatever. So there's just no question that this machine is set up to have high status individuals who are able to form audiences around ideas. They can grow those audiences in the type of trust that is built in the way that those audiences are formed. There's just nothing like it in the paid performance marketing world. The trust that I built through this LinkedIn campaign is much deeper than those ads. Those ads were like funny. People sort of like started talking to us or whatever. But like, if you've read like 50 of my posts and you're just like, man, this guy's got it figured out, right? Like
Absolutely.
it's a totally, it's a totally different thing. So, I did not, the funny thing about RB2B was we built the product after it became clear that I was going to be able to build this audience.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, yeah, we didn't even it was a hypothesis. It's like, oh, the B2B world needs something like this. And then I went to my LinkedIn consultant, Alec, and I was like, dude, I had that big B2B post in July when I talked about downsizing our sales force. A bunch of people have been talking to me about how their existing BDR operations are not really working anymore. What if I just took a month and like wrote about this BDR problem and like other sort of like sales problems that we had, that I knew other people in SaaS had in 2023 because they were talking to me, right? They were like coming into me being like, should I downsize my sales force and like orient more towards inbound than outbound? Because everyone tried to push it with outbound, in my observation, between 2022 and 2023, and it just didn't work. So, like sat down on a Friday to write the 3 posts for the next week. And it was, I wrote them and it was just like bang, 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 like big, 100 times more engagement than I was getting trying to like write for the Shopify stores. So I was like, wow, like I can write posts like this. We got to build a product for these people. So yeah. And that's kind of how that happened. And it's, like, I think it's like it's just incredible. It's like, I kind of know if I write about certain things, it'll pull in different types of people to the post. If I write about ABM, it's going to get like VPs of marketing. If I write about, a 0 to 1, if I write about like Bootstrapped 3 startups to 1 million, it's going to get the early stage founder guys. I know what to write to get salespeople. So it's just incredible. It really is. Like, I just don't think but if I didn't have, and look, there's things we're figuring out about RB2B to make it a better product, but like it does what it says it does, and it is novel. And like a bunch of people have like sort of added it to their platform or whatever, the idea, but like, it's still, we think our data is high quality, it performs as advertised, and is a novel thing that is valuable to, really, it's like the farther your business is along, the more valuable having that signal is. And we were kind of telling people to use it in the wrong way last year, but yeah, that was a key. And not only was the product novel, the pricing was novel too. I was saying it was free, right? So it's like,
and you've been changing content. I've been looking at the pricing. You've been experimenting, and you've been kind of almost dynamically experimenting with the pricing, which is unique as well. But I have something here that I want to kind of add and ask also. You also mention a lot in your posts about outbound marketing not working as it used to. The traditional prospecting, just picking up your database, firing up. And when you look at what your content does, you clearly get the idea that outbound can never be this powerful, because you're just still thrusting your content to someone who possibly more than 70-80% is not even interested in it, right? So I kind of love it. Could you highlight more about the fact that you've tried a lot of things, and that's beautiful, and I call it marketing endurance. And I think if you were an athlete, and if marketing was an Olympic sport, you'll possibly be the world champion, or the top 3, because 25 hours of time spent every single week on stuff like this. And I think you possibly crossed what Malcolm Gladwell spoke about, 10,000 hours, right? I think you're far beyond that in this domain now. So if you could talk a little bit more about why the other channels that people kind of usually go after and what almost every marketing pundit's talking about, they don't work.
So I think some things definitely do work. So the thing that's the easiest to be like, that just doesn't work anymore is the whole, I call it the predictable revenue model, where you get kids out of university, you put them in a seat, you have them type keys and click their mouse, and that magically creates demos for you. When there were 10 and 100 companies doing that, it worked beautifully. When there was 100,000 companies doing that same thing, that's just not the arbitrage anymore, right? Like it is so, so if I asked you, Kinner, like, do you believe that more email will be sent in 2026 than 2025? What would be your answer?
I mean, from all data, it's going to be quite a large amount, right? I mean, much larger than what it was.
Exponentially more every year, right? And like there's nothing that I'm more confident in that, like, you know, these guys are creating these sexy looking companies like 11x AI and Artisan. Like, those are just spam cannons, right? Like, the world doesn't want a robot to spam, right? Like, let me tell you what Gmail doesn't want. They don't want a robot spamming them, right? Like, but like the response to, so that I think is a fundamental reason why that type of outreach has lost effectiveness. The supply demand versus how it was 10 years ago is just on its head. In the response to it not working is just more volumes and more innovative ways of spamming. Like, 5 years ago, we used our primary domain and we had 5 people sitting in the Philippines that were doing manual lead gen during one half of their day. And they were literally sending manual emails off of 5 different inboxes in the other half of their day. Like, you can't do that now, right? Your domain will get torched. What you have to go through to try to get an email delivered cold is crazy. It's 100 steps. And like next year, it'll probably be 1,000 steps, right? Like, will there still be some value to people who know how to do that? Like, of course, because man, if you can get email through, it's great, but like, it is going to get harder. And usually the response to less effectiveness is higher volume, which just makes the problem worse. So that is the problem with that. And like, it wouldn't even be such a big conversation if it wasn't a huge channel for tech over the last 10 years, right? Like, the number of SDR and BDRs grew exponentially. Now it's shrinking again for this reason. I actually am very constructive on things like owned events. This kind of like using with retention.com, really the only type of outreach we do is we have a target list of like 1,000 brands we're trying to meet. And then we find people in the real world who know those people. And then we try to create an experience that is so good that those people will actually go. Right. So like there's this woman, Taylor Swift, who's like a musician. She's very popular in America and Canada, maybe there too. We got a box for one of her concerts. And, you know, the event was, it was so good that like the CMO of Foot Locker didn't even believe that it was real until Diana hit her from her LinkedIn profile. She thought it was like a spam, you know? So yeah, I think that type of thing will always do well. And I think it's like another reason why, you know, my guess is like the trade show industry is thriving, right? Because it's bringing people together in the real world so that they can, you know, solve each other's problems. So yeah, I will not for one second say that those channels do not work. They do. If your motion is to sell someone $1 million deal after taking them to a really expensive sports game, that works. But how are you getting to that person, right? Like, and my answer is probably through somebody you know that they know in the real world. That's how I see where I see things going. And then the other side is like, you know, there's these, I am equally as confident that the power of thought leadership in B2B will increase at the same rate of email sends, right? Like, there's no doubt in my mind that like more people will be doing what I'm doing in 5 years to get startups off the ground than they are right now, like by next maybe. right? They'll see that I did it. They'll sort of look at how it worked, and they'll have good products, and it all work together and it'll work. And you know, a PLG motion plus the influencer profile, like you may not get that to 100 million ARR, but like it is a super efficient way to create a very nice business. You know, we're almost at 5 right now, and we don't have 5 people working on this, you know, like, yeah.
Crazy. I mean, it's
No,
so
it's amazing,
inspiring.
right? Like and like, you just need, my whole thing with this is like, I use that example of the guy who was 30 million ARR banking 20 million. I didn't know that was a possibility until I heard him on a podcast. I didn't know, you know what I mean? I didn't know it was an option for me. Like, I want people to know what I'm doing, that it's a possibility for them, because then when you're sitting across from an investor and you're at 3 million ARR and they're telling you that they're going to give you this $8 million so that it's like, know that you'll never be able to pay yourself if you want to get profitable and be a dividend company ever again. Like, you just need to know that. If you agree to work with them today, that is not an option for you. And by the way, if you hold out a couple of years, what's happening to me might be an option for you. And I'm telling you, it's much better, you know?
There's no doubt about that.
Except for like this very low probability dream scenario in which everything keeps going right for you for the entire rest of your life, which I haven't met very many of those people. I met a couple.
Yeah, no, so true. I think what you're saying is right. The future of customer acquisition, by doing what you're doing, everybody gets it that, you know, there's going to be a saturation point eventually. But let me tell you, it's not everybody's capability to do.
But by the way, I'm not sure. If you look at the D2C side, it's not like Mr. Beast can't grow his content business. You know, so I think as more and more people do it, what you will need to do to grow a large audience will become increasingly more sophisticated. But
yeah,
what's interesting about, if you want to call it influencers in the world, is I believe that their authenticity is really what causes the audience to grow, and people are very unique. So your content and my content, like, you couldn't copy my stuff. It wouldn't work for you. I couldn't copy your stuff. It wouldn't work for me. And you growing and me growing is not mutually exclusive. Like, and just to finish this thought, like, I think if you are world-class, it is not mutually exclusive, but like, you're confined by the rate at which LinkedIn can hold attention as a platform. But the best people, I think, just push the average people down. They don't push each other down. Does that make sense? Like, if you're a top 5% creator, you're just going to push down the bottom 80%. You're going to make it, it's going to get harder to break through. But I don't think that me and like Chris Walker are like taking attention from each other. You know what I mean?
I get it. I mean, to each their own. You have your audiences, people who love your content, and there are so many others. And, you know, there are times when let's say I'm looking at, for an instance, Tim does fantastic content on AI, right? I mean, there are people, Easy Gen's founder, you know, you look at that particular area. If you're trying to improve your LinkedIn audience, you're trying to write more, find out hacks around AI, then you go and watch their content. But you're absolutely right. I follow you when I'm held by something that you wrote. There is a reason for that. It echoes with my persona. And here is my question around ICP. You know, you mentioned that you're not just writing content for the marketing guy, the entrepreneur. I mean, there are possibly investors. You know, I know an investor from a small fund, just about $50 million, who kind of listens to you and he likes your content, because I've seen that and I'm surprised. You're kind of anti-venture capital in a way, right? I mean, if we could say that. And this guy follows you and he recommends you to his portfolio companies. Can you believe that, right? I don't know if you've heard that, right? B2B portfolio company. So this is interesting. Is this deliberate? Because a lot of books that you'll talk about, the playbooks that are established for GTM, would talk against it. They'll be like, you know, go after this ICP kit. So do you believe you've kind of reached that critical mass, that you've gone after these 3, 4, 5 ICPs? What's your lesson there, and how should we do it?
I just want to I'm gathering my thoughts here. So if I were starting over again. So I think the easiest one for me to write, the easiest ICP is just like me 5 years ago before I started retention.com. Just speak to that person. I remember what it was like. It was very painful. You know, I was stuck for 3 years. Nothing I tried worked. I just know the pain. It was agonizing, you know, and it was all I knew. So I just thought that was the journey, and I was kind of fine with it. But like I it just was always trying to push harder or whatever else. And one of the reasons that I know my stuff is good is because that version of me would have killed for this. Nobody was writing stuff like this. Who is at my stage, right? Like, it's one thing to build in public if you're at 1 million ARR, you know, and you're putting out monthly posts, and who cares really? You know, some guy who's bootstrapped 25 and a year ago launched a company that got 4 times as big as you over your last 5 years in 9 months. And he's telling you everything that he did. Like, that's just incredible stuff, you know, like in real time, right? Like, I just know it is because I would have killed for it. Like, and like, I would try to probably copy things I was doing right now, me of 5 years ago. Now I'm to the point where I don't believe in copying, but like, I kind of like Max from Warmly. I don't know if you know them. Like, he just kind of copies everything I do. I copied stuff when I was his age also. I think it's like part of the learning process. I think he's going to be really successful. I'm not sure if it's with Warmly or not, but like he's, you know, again, he's copying this build in public thing. By the way, like, his stuff is boring, you know, like I think there's like a storytelling element.
People get it wrong.
Yeah. I think there's a story. It's like I prioritize the storytelling element over the detail, because I think that's what people are there for. For me, they're there to learn, and they're there to get entertained equally, right? Like, if I stopped entertaining, 0. If I stopped teaching, 0. It's like 50-50. And that's one thing that's missing. And then I think his point of his perspective is not as valuable as mine because his journey has not been as long, you know? So like, correspondingly, you know, a year ago, I had 50,000 followers and he had 25. Now I have 120,000 and he has 30. Right? Because like, we're just doing it differently. So this is just hard, right? Because it's like, I was able to write to my former self, and then that person was also kind of an ICP customer. They're not my ICP paying customer. My ICP paying customer are these marketers, but they're they're deeply involved in this ecosystem that I operate in.
They make a decision at times as well. Like, they're going to tell the marketer at times that, okay, let's do this, you know, because they have the pain.
So the most straightforward thing to do is that. But then there's people who are like, well, I built a SaaS for, you know, preschools. Obviously, if you do what I'm doing and you build in public, like, the preschool owners are not going to relate to that. Like, you may build a different type of audience, but, you know, Dave Gerhardt loves to correct me on this point, right? I kind of felt this as I was trying to write for e-com store owners. Like, we were going after the top of the Shopify ecosystem, and the whole time I was doing it, I did it for basically 12 months straight. And I was like, well, why are people going to read this and not Nick Sharma's content, who owns 8 brands and an agency, and he's building landing pages every day for these e-com guys, and he talk about conversion or whatever else. And I never resolved that in my head, right? So I think because that wasn't resolved, and then, you know, the second that I did start writing for this B2B crowd, it just exploded, you know, because like, I am a go-to-market leader, you know, I am like, I don't directly oversee a sales team, but I have a sales team. You know, I do marketing every day, right? I got, you know, kicked in the nuts like everyone did in 2023. So I can speak about that pain in a way that you couldn't speak about it unless it was your lived experience. And that was like a disconnect that I didn't feel with these e-com guys. Like, I'm not you know, when I talk to one of them and they're like, dude, Meta's slaughtering us. And I'm like, well, tell me more about it. And they're like, well, they got this new AI, and it's like, they've taken it upon themselves to basically call out when there are unsubstantiated claims on a website, and then they put all of those products in a bucket and they don't run ads to them. I don't know what to do. Like, but that's not pain that I'm feeling. Like the pain that I felt was like, oh man, like we can grow this thing. And then I hired a bunch of salespeople and we weren't booking any more demos than we were before. Like a lot of people felt that, you know what I mean? And like you learned the demand creation versus demand capture lesson the hard way in 2020. Like a ton of people tried that. It's like, oh, we're not growing fast enough. Well, I got 2 BDRs. They're booking 15 demos a month. What if I added 8 more? Easy peasy. Never works. Never works. You got to grow the brand first, then the marketing machine, then you can start adding BDRs on to capture that demand. But like, if you are listening to this and you have this magical alignment where you are your ICP, then there's only one place to start. Just like write to some earlier version of yourself, in my opinion, something like that.
Beautiful. Never thought of it like that, but I think it's such a great advice. And, it also would help us come over imposter syndrome, which is, you've done it, right? You have these big numbers to talk about. A lot of founders that I meet, they haven't cracked the numbers yet, but they want to start building a personal brand. They get a resonance, but you feel this within you that I'm not the right guy to talk about it. So what you're saying, talk to an earlier version of yourself and, kind of try and give those nuggets. It's beautiful. I think it would work for a lot of people.
One more thing, I was kind of like knocking on this guy, Max, who's doing something similar to me. Some would say copying. I actually still think that he should do it. It's just not as valuable, which like over time, as his journey goes on, that body of work becomes incredibly valuable because you get to see Max every month as he goes on. And like, while his post for January is not as valuable to most people as my post for this January, in 5 years, it might be, in going, the ability to go back and look over the course of their journey and see what their problems were and how he was solving them and like everything else, like that becomes incredibly valuable. And he is building audience. It's just not as magnetic as mine is because of all the reasons that I just said. So
yeah, I think authenticity is probably the central one. I mean, your authenticity and everything that you talk about coming from what you've gone through, I think that's what makes me connect to it. And I don't know about a lot of other people, but I think that's the key point. You feel it when you're writing it. I think there's some energy that the words carry, which is your authenticity that they kind of, portray. So I think that's probably the biggest one of them.
Well, I've started investigating like the art and science of writing. And one of the most profound, it is a goal of a writer, is to write a sentence in a way to where the reader feels exactly how the writer feels when they write that.
Profound.
It's like passing on an emotional state. And I had not had that vocabulary for that, but I definitely, it's definitely something I am conscious of, like I want to write the hook in a certain way to where, it just really makes you click see more. Like what is this guy talking about? You know what I mean? Like I have to read more. And then, I think the best posts take you on a mini hero's journey, like a mini little dip. It's like it articulates this pain and it agitates it. And then the takeaway sort of lets you out, it provides the resolution to that pain. And then I just love ending them on this like coy little play on words or something, or like something pithy that really like gives you a dopamine hit. And if I go back and read the post, I'm like, oh man, that was a good ending. Wow. I wrote a post about clay yesterday. It's like perfect example of this. It's like the last sentence was like, unicorns are built one call at a time. Something like that. Right.
I read your content and I felt this a lot of times that if you just spent about 6-7 hours, there's a beautiful book in them. You don't even have to write anything, you've already written the book. It's just putting all that together and I think it'll come out beautifully. And I know that possibly people don't read books as much as they do online. And nobody's disputing that. But I think your brand definitely matches with the authenticity that a powerful book would portray. So I think you should definitely think about it. And you've already, I don't even think that you'll have to write it. You'll just have to curate your own content and, just kind of stitch it in a narrative.
Yeah. So I listened to Alex Hormozy talk about how much work he puts into those books.
Oh, yeah.
And it's crazy. Dude, yeah, exactly. And he's like, if people knew how much work this was, they wouldn't think it was as good as they think it is, And like, I don't want to write a book until I'm willing to commit that amount of energy to it, and I just don't have the time right now.
We are in 25. I agree that you have this beautiful capability to write, but I think we've got to give due credit to AI. I know it can't write, but it can read patterns. So when you write hooks in a certain way, and you're going to try that with Grok 3 and certain other models that are on their way, some are out already. If you feed them 6 posts that you've written, and when you try and analyze, how they give you the next hook, you'll be shocked. It's almost thinking the way I would. And you could do a A/B test there, write the hook for your next post before you read what AI gives you, and you'll be like, okay, well, this is spooky.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Those tools, what will make that Grok valuable to LinkedIn is still my perspective. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, it would still be impossible for you to put 8 Adam Robinson posts in and try to relay your experience in my words and like capture audience on LinkedIn. I think it it only helps me. And like, I got a great individual contributor, CTO, who's just amazingly, it's like, as AI gets better, I think it just enables him to build great software quicker. And the average engineer is still sort of like, yeah, they're moving faster, but they're kind of creating crap,
Yeah. No, I hear you. I think you're absolutely right. Your content is not just words. It's your story. It's your background. It's what you've achieved. It's all that stitched into, and the emotions you portray on paper, things you really felt. So I completely agree with what you're saying, but AI is brilliant in reading patterns, and that's it. It can get close to replicating some of that, but you're right, it would work only for you. I mean, the story would be a waste if I was going to kind of talk about it. So I would like to kind of shift gears to the last bit that I want to know, and for people who are listening to this, your funnel, when you built all this top of the funnel audience that knows you, the brands there, what are the final steps? You mentioned PLG. Is that the only bit that we are talking about to convert all the audiences that are listening to you, following you, building trust in your brand?
Okay, so the question is, if I understand it correctly, is PLG the only way to monetize, or it's like, can this help a sales motion, right? Or like,
yeah, I mean, how does your funnel look like? You've got top of the funnel through all the content, and people trust your brand. Now, how is it converting? Like, how does your full funnel look like now for our B2B? Because that's what is the focus right now, right? With all this content.
Yeah. With this stuff, it's definitely our B2B. The first almost year at this point, we'll be a year old in 11 days. It was very much just like letting people sign up and use it on their own. I think the workflow that we were selling was put a human being in front of this noisy Slack channel and let them figure it out. That's not a great workflow. We were also selling, use these leads to book demos, which I don't believe that that's the value of the signal anymore. I think it's like something different. We think that we have a hypothesis that running the signal through the CRM and alerting reps through workflows in the CRM in some way, either adding to lead score or sending it to them uniquely in a Slack channel of a target account, is the way to use it, or starting some automated outreach off the CRM. So in last year's PLG, there wasn't a human involved. We were letting people figure it out themselves. In this new workflow that I described, we're having to basically segment customers who fit into a persona that would use this tool this way, meaning they have reps, they have a CRM, they have a target account list. It is in their CRM. If you sent signals to a CRM, you could then alert the account owner that happened. So that actually requires a human being onboarding. So we we have, one salesperson currently, probably will add another one. But, it's a combination of it's like a sales assisted PLG segmenting these higher value customers and like making sure they use the tool in the right way. I think that this could work for a sales-led business just exactly the same as it works for PLG. When we get our ducks in a row, we will be outbounding off of my LinkedIn profile to target people. And I think that's going to be very effective. Just, you know what I mean? Like we will try to get people. Yeah, we will try to get people to pay 30 to 50K a year for this improved product suite who fit a certain buyer persona, and probably start with people that are frequent engagers with the content.
Yeah, and you can pull those lists now easily with tools on the internet. So I think, yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for, I mean, the way you close the funnel and you put it brilliantly. There's another part of what you do, which is super inspiring. And I want to kind of talk about that a little bit more. The way you manage your teams, I mean, 5 people making this crazy amounts of, revenue. Like, I mean, how does that even work, right? Retention.com's a very small team as well, right? And you're managing 2 companies. I know you have a great team. You've written about it. No, but how do you do it? Like, I think there could be a full-blown online course and stuff on that. And I know you're big on education. And this is my request, because when you come out with it, I would love to read about it. There are people selling courses on building systems, the thought process of being a founder who kind of is a hands-off guy, not burning hands in everything. So all of this, like, what's the formula there?
So there's a philosophical component, right? And whenever somebody gives me shit because I'm not a zero revenue bootstrapper and I'm not having to go into debt to get whatever, I will respond to them and say, I have 30 million ARR company that has 40 people. I'm a bootstrapper. So what does that mean, right? It's like, there is a way to run your company where you basically are certain that anytime you scale something up beyond a tiny experiment, that it is going to work, right? Whereas the venture approach is, let's run 10 large experiments this quarter. I was talking to Clay about this SEO agency that we both use. And I'm like, how are you looking at this? Because I started using it because they said it was working. And then Bruin's like, well, I'm not really sure that it's working, but what are you paying him? He's like, dude, we just raised $90 million. Like, paying this SEO agency 20 grand a month for something that might be working is totally fine. And it's just not fine for me. Like we were paying him 10 grand and I need to know that it's working in a real way, So I think that's a story, but the moral of that story is that there is this attitude about spending that it needs to be clear that it's working, which is very interesting that I'm such a believer in this brand marketing, because the LinkedIn thing, you only see that it's working over a very long period of time. There's no way that I could say my December LinkedIn program was better than my January and worse than November. It would be impossible. But I know that over the last 12 months, it's been epic, and it continues to be, right? Can't really trace it to free trial signups. You know what I mean? But there's a philosophy about spending money. There is a type of person that operates well in that environment, just like a do more with less. And then there is there's a leverage conversation, right? So it's if you looked at all the activities you could do to try to grow your business, and you were these are my maximum points of leverage, and these are my minimum. Clay might do all of those, right? And Clay might actually be getting 90% of their business growth off of one channel that has insane leverage, but they might layer on 15 other channels to get that last 10%. And that might actually be worth it for them, right? If you're a bootstrapper, it's not. Right? I'm only doing stuff where the 80-20 is in my favor. I am spending 20%, not me, everybody. We are doing stuff where we have not seen the diminishing returns yet. And we would rather sacrifice growth than see diminishing returns in growth. Does that make sense? That's just like a philosophical orientation. And like,
it is.
You know, who knows what the outcome of our business is going to be? Like, I think we've gotten to a point where you have to at least listen to my arguments, right? Like, you know, like I'm credible enough in how big the business has gotten that like, this is worthy of investigating whether this way could work for you. But like, that's just it. It's like, I have managed over the last, by the way, I'm like, my team like does not look anything like it did 10 years ago, but this is like an extension of the company that I started 10 years ago. We have enormously capable people relative to how it used to be. And they all think and act like this, you know, and it's our culture. They're proud of it, you know, like they love being a part of a business that is like so insanely efficient that it almost doesn't even make sense. You know, literally people are asking us like how we do it, right? Like I told them we had an all team offsite in Mexico last week. I was like, I showed them this slide of companies at 30 million, you know, first it was companies that had as many people as we did, and they're at 1 million ARR. And then I went to companies at 30 million ARR and showed them their team sizes. And the smallest one was like 140, you know,
You're
and like
40.
Yeah, 140. Like, you know, like nobody is able to actually keep that, you know, $750 to $1 million per head as they scale. But they're doing it the venture way. So it's not really fair comparison. Like there's not many bootstrap companies at 25 or 30 really. But there can be, you know, I think the reason there's not is because investors get in early and they kind of get people on this track that some should be on, but many should not. So yeah, those are really the two things.
Wow.
You know,
no, makes sense. And it's easier said than done. And I think you've taken all this time to tweak the DNA, the culture, piece by piece. And I think there's so much to learn there. And I really insist on you building more content around this. I think you should.
Okay. Yeah, that's I'll write that down, because if you want that content, then other people probably do too.
No, systems, you know, let me tell you about this a little bit more. So my platform's now used by a lot of SMEs and mid-sized businesses as well. You know, the biggest problem that these guys battle with, and a lot of these family businesses, SMEs, they're bootstrapped, right? They never end up raising, service businesses and multiple other types. So the way you look at hiring, managing finances, your 80-20 experiment mentality, the culture, these are gold mines. I mean, nobody else could talk about them. You know, you have results that are very few, like you rightly said, you know, so few companies in the world would have them. So, I mean, what goes behind that is, if I was to put a monetary value on it, because our platform's used by people to sell content as well, I think this content is higher LTV than even what you offer in SaaS. And it's super tough to replicate because, you know, you build it all. I mean, and if you bottle it up, you know, you're talking about, you know, what Tony Robbins does, right? I mean, the kind of numbers that these guys, business coaches, Dean Graziosi, Tony Robbins. So, I mean, we're talking legendary stuff, which is even beyond just the preachers. You know, you're a practitioner who would give like really valuable advice. So I would buy your content, then pay for someone who's just been a coach. That's kind of my take on it, right?
Yeah.
I just have one more question. I know we've kind of just gone beyond the usual time that you had committed. Just a quick one around the thesis that we have here is that if you use the education, the teaching approach, you know, and that's what we called Edbound, it can bring down your CAC. It builds fans, followers in a much better way. I see you stitching a great strategy around this, right? You've started experimenting with online courses. You have an academy as well. We noticed that. I mean, obviously your content, your posts are as good as a mini ebook or a mini report or a white paper, right? I could say that, right? So many of them. So would you like to talk a little bit more about, you know, this entire playbook? What else is coming into this and what all is happening?
Sure. So there was a time last year when I got very excited about this guy, Russell Brunson, and how he grew ClickFunnels. And what he was doing was he was bundling education about how to grow an internet business with the platform fee of the software. And people weren't buying the platform, they were buying how to grow their business. I got very excited about that. The problem is, and I went and did this. I did the whole, sell from a webinar like he was doing. The problem that I ended up having with it was the ICP paying customers of our software are marketers at companies kind of like farther along, call it like 10 million ARR and above. The ICP consumer of this content is kind of a 0 to 3 SaaS. Founder,
expert.
Right. Yeah. Founder. So the overlap, there's some overlap, but it's like not, Russell's overlap was like 100%. That being said, we are, I do, it's back to like, what else am I doing with this megaphone? It's like, I want to tell the story that there's this bootstrap way you can do it. Another thing that I believe after pursuing this is that, unless you go to Y Combinator or another accelerator like this, like there's really not, it's really easy to like look at startup content and get the idea that you should be doing things before you have product market fit that you should not be doing. What do I mean? Cold email, running ads, like all of this stuff, it is not helpful unless you're getting unless you have word of mouth. And the only way to get to word of mouth is to get in a proper customer discovery loop, and it's super manual. So that is like perfectly aligned with my courses. So we're starting this community business that basically is like, it's going to be like a freemium funnel of like, here's everything that that's basically it. It's like, you're wasting time and money if you're doing anything other than talking to prospects and customers and coding, if you're not getting word of mouth. And then there'll be a community of people who actually want to network with people to like, because it's lonely being a startup founder. I know. So that's kind of like something, it's kind of a sideshow. It just doesn't like fall beautifully directly into the SaaS product. So it's kind of like a separate product line I started. I put our head of growth, Pete, in charge of it. So yeah, and we'll see where that goes. The most diehard fans are the perfect consumers of that. And then I still get some love from the people who are the perfect consumers of the software. It's just not as diehard. Marketers are kind of like, I like them or I hate them. Whereas the founders, most of them are like, that is who I want to be in 5 years. Right.
I came across, you should check out this community by Gagan Biyani, the guy who started Udemy in the beginning. He was one of the, kind of founders, and then he moved out. Maven. So Maven's just started with a growth track. And the ICP that you're talking about, the guys who are $10 million ARR companies. I mean, it's just that the level of the course and the offering kind of gets combined with other people in your network. And I mean, that's how Dean or Anthony does it. Their programs have been bought by marketeers and senior leaders at Salesforce. So I think you've got all the pieces there. And I mean, once you start measuring, you'll see the community that you're talking about will have a lot of spillover subscribers for our B2B retention. And that's going to be the moat that kind of builds another masterpiece for you. So I think...
Yeah, I'm certainly open to it. I agree with you fundamentally that... edutainment is the secret weapon for growing a B2B company. There's no doubt.
Oh, yeah. Superb. I think that's the closing line, right?
Yeah.
Kind of love it. Everything you said. I think that this has been fantastic. It is such a pleasure. I mean, it's more than just recording this. I get to learn so much from you. I just wish that the product comes in globally, because we're planning
there's a compliance issue there, and we need publisher networks and stuff. Maybe it will eventually.
Yeah. Maybe not in Europe, because GDPR is kind of a big pain, right? But I mean, not everybody else has that kind of a data protection compliance issue, right? So well, fantastic. I'm so sure that you're going to be one of the first ones to build $100 million ARR, probably, if you ever kind of decide to get a valuation done. Because if you're not raising, I mean, the traditional valuations don't make sense, right? I mean, if you're making $100 million, you kind of just take the cream. But yeah, if that's going to happen, this is going to keep getting better because all great things. And I think your heart's in the right place and the words have such power. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And, I really thank you for taking out the time and you've been fantastic. Thank you.
Well, you're very welcome, Kenner. Thank you.